Hello, I'm Brett Knowles from PM Squared Consulting. This video takes you for a fairly detailed walkthrough the work program that we're proposing for helping Scott Batter implement a sustainability scorecard across the organization. The proposal that we sent has this as a work plan. There are basically 5 steps. Build the corporate scorecard, build the product cascaded scorecards, figure out rules around cascading so we can go build location scorecards, and then finally make sure that it all joins up together. So I'm going to walk you through each of those steps. Now, what you'll see is this is a repeating structure that we use at the corporate level, again at the product level, and again at the location level, where we set up a sustainability strategy map around that particular scope, check it for completeness, link it up to the activities inside the organization, and then build a scorecard. So let's take a look at each step. The sustainability strategy map is fairly easy to produce for organizations like Scott Batter. And the reason is you've already done lots of thinking about your sustainability approach and also strategy. And in fact, the work that you're currently conducting with TNS will add even more richness to this portfolio. What we're going to do is take that to build a sustainability strategy map. Now, there are other videos that go into more detail, but briefly, we're capturing your strategy across the triple top line: society, economic, and environment. And within economic or business, we've broken it down within the balanced scorecard for perspectives of financial, customer, internal, and people. And what we've done is captured your existing strategic goals and put them into the right perspective, and then given, in this case, an illustrative weighting of how important it is. So at the corporate level, we'll be completing this work on day 1 in the morning, for example. The next step, think of it as day 1 in the afternoon, is we're going to take that and cross-check it against different frameworks. So currently, the primary framework you've been using is the TNS Future Fit Business Benchmark. Now, within this benchmark, they've specified, the thematic stresses, principles, business principles, and finally, specific goals. So these specific goals should appear on your strategy map. If they don't, then it means either your strategy map is missing something or that goal doesn't pertain to Scott Batter. So what we're going to do is take this framework and take a look at your strategy map and see if we can match them. So for example, in this illustrative strategy map, under the objective that we created called S2, Develop a Harmonious Society, in our mind links to the Future Fit Business Benchmark Goal 18, Community Concerns are actively solicited, impartially judged, and transparently addressed, and number 20, the right tax is paid at the right place at the right time. S3 seems to link up to Future Fit Business Benchmarks 21 and 19, and so forth. Now, many of these future fit objectives may match up with multiple strategic goals on your map. And we can figure that out as we go through. The more important thing in this framework check is to discover, are there any of these 21 that don't appear on your strategy map? Because again, if they don't appear, that may indicate our strategy map is missing something, or maybe we need to agree that that doesn't pertain to Scott Batter. Now, we can use other frameworks as well. We can use the United Nations SDGs, we can use GRI, IR, or even any frameworks that regulators impose upon you or that you have from other organizations. In the net, what we're trying to do is make sure that we've got a complete cross-section of strategy captured in the strategy map. We now move on to the next phase. In the next phase, we're translating strategy into action. I mean, here's what we know. Our research tells us that most strategies fail. And it's not because they're not correct. It's because what people do day to day are not lined up to those strategic objectives. So what we should be able to do is take that strategy map and think of listing those objectives down the left side of a spreadsheet. And then across the top, we'll list your key value streams, or when we get down to the location level, it may be your specific processes. So this particular group of processes happens to be coming from the work we did at Zagreb. Now, what we should be able to do is figure out what is the impact of each of these processes on these strategic objectives. Because obviously, if you have a process that has a high impact on an important objective, by definition, that process becomes more important. So this is what it looked like when we scored Zagreb. What we'll see is we've colored these cells black where there's a high impact. In this case, 5 out of 5 impact on an objective that's worth 12. Here, a 4 out of 5 impact on an objective that's worth 13. So it's easy to see where the critical capability nodes are in your business. And then the dark gray indicates the second quadrant of importance. Then light gray is third, and then blank, of course, is no impact. So we can figure out A, where the important nodes are. We can also add up for each process to determine how many strategy points are at play for that process and begin to figure out where our core processes are. We can also look horizontally to see which of our strategies require more process support. In fact, we can take another step and estimate how we're currently performing. So in this case, we have the impact from the previous sheet. Now we've added in our guess about performance. And these red, yellow, greens are based on a combination of how we're performing and how important it is. So obviously, if something's really important on a high impact, performance of D is red. It's unacceptable. Whereas in other cases, I may have something that's less important, and therefore a lower performance level becomes acceptable. So for example, here we have the same performance level, but because it's a low impact on a low weighted objective, that's okay. So this allows us to begin seeing our strategic performance level. Now, it's a lot of numbers. What we can actually do is add this up horizontally and create a chart that looks like this. So now for each objective, the height of this bar represents the level of process support we need to be successful. The blue part represents how well we're currently performing, and the gold part is a gap between current performance and what we need to be strategically successful. So in this case, it becomes pretty clear where we need to focus our process improvement activities. See the gap here on improve product mix looks like it's the biggest gap, and over here on live the Scott Batter values, quite a small gap. So we need to focus over here, not over here. In fact, as we launch projects, our goal is to close those gold bar gaps. So if we just take a look at those gold bar gaps, we can see where we need to focus our projects. Now, we can do the same ontology, the scoring of the impact of our proposed projects, which we did for Zagreb, and we came up with this chart. Now here, the height of the red dot represents the level of projects we have to aid closing that gap. So for example, for I1, Optimize Operations, there's lots of projects that have impacts there. Whereas understand the needs of our customers, we don't have many projects stacked up there. Now, again, we're scoring the impact of a portfolio of projects, assuming they're successful. So since these projects are there to close those gold gaps, maybe we should combine those two charts. And this is inevitably what we see. In some cases, we have more project support than is required. In other cases, we have gaps. We've got a big gap in performance and not many projects. So this is a conversation that we can now have about allocating resources correctly. Now, there's a number of reasons why this happens. Sometimes these are unintended consequences. We have a project that's targeted to do something else, and it has spin-off benefits over here. In other cases, we don't know of the gap, or in some cases, we need to deal with other issues now based on scarce resources. In any case, what we can do by the end of effectively day 3 is have a conversation about aligning our resources and making sure that individuals understand what they're accountable for. Then the final step, what we now need to do is add key performance indicators. Now, again, it's not all that difficult. Since we're using the Future Fit Business Benchmark, for all of those 21 goals, they have specific indicators that they would like us to use. So it's pretty straightforward. Although we often experience that the organization is not collecting those specific metrics yet, And therefore, we may choose to use a different metric that we are collecting for now and move towards a future fit business benchmark ideal objective sometime in the future. Now, in addition to the future fit framework, we obviously can just harvest your existing metrics and scores that you're keeping to produce a scorecard. Now, in this example, we're putting it in the cloud-based software solution that seems to work best. And this is actually Zegreb's data. And we put this in by the end of the second day. So you can see we have the strategy map, and on it, the indicators have shown us red, yellow, green about how we're doing on performance. And for each of those, they're able to provide us monthly data. So if we drill into it, we can see some more detail about what's happening, both at the monthly level and also at the project level. So again, we're going to be repeating this at each location: strategy map, cross-check for completeness, link it to the activities we do and therefore individuals, and then finally, getting the metrics in place. So that's the first step. And at Scott Batter, we assume that we'll get the corporate activity done on, for example, Monday and Tuesday of a week. Then on the next 2 days, Wednesday and Thursday, we'll do the 3 product cascades. Based on that, on the Friday, we'll get together and determine what are the cascade rules, what objectives are mandatory, contributory, and discretionary, and how do they need to be reflected in the location scorecards. Likewise, what metrics or specific measures are mandatory, contributory, and discretionary. And again, what this allows us to do is, as we go and do the cascade at each location, we can make sure that we've carried the strategy down correctly and not having the broken telephone where the message gets lost. Now, once we've done that, we still need to cross-check. So once we've built the corporate scorecards, the product scorecards, and the location scorecards, we now need a step to cross-check to make sure all of these aligned correctly. And again, there are more detailed webinars you can listen to that go through each of these steps in more detail. For example, there's one that takes about 30 minutes that goes through these steps. There's another webinar that takes about 10 minutes that talks about the cascading process and the benefits. So this is the overall proposal that we have for moving Scott Batter ahead. In terms of the timing, here's what we've been talking about. The idea that across a series of weeks, we're going to get this work done. So in the first week, as I suggested, and these are supposed to be color-coded to match these colors down here. So in the first week, we're going to spend a couple of days doing the corporate level one, a couple more days doing the product level one, and then a day doing the corporate level one. And then, let's say, for example, the next week, we can go off and use those rules to go build, let's say, the UK version. And then the week after that, maybe we go off and do France. And then the week after that, maybe we come back and cross-check to make sure we've got this alignment. Now what we're proposing is taking a break, whether that's a month, a week, 6 months, some amount of time to make sure this adds value in your organization, that people can use it and it's helping us make better decisions and empowering our employees better. And once we've established that, we can go off and do other locations. And we can even do them concurrently if we want, since we have this now standard framework to build them by. And then eventually we need to do that final cross-check to make sure that the entire ecosystem is working correctly. So there's a quick walkthrough of how we see this work plan unfolding. But obviously we need your feedback on, does that seem effective, what the right sequence and timing is. Thank you for your time.